Well, hello everybody and welcome to Gene's Reviews. If you're new here, please think about subscribing. Also, if you stay all the way to the end, it really helps YouTube push the video out a little bit more. Plus, I have a joke at the end of every single video. Today, I thought we'd check one out from Most Amazing Top 10. This is the top 10 disturbing things people have said after waking up from a coma. That can be kind of creepy. Let's check it out.
Whether it's from some kind of traumatic injury or you've been medically induced, I can easily say that being in a coma is not something I ever want to experience. Especially if it's like anything like what happened to the people on this list.
Especially if you're aware of what's going on.
My name is Kennedy, and today on Most Amazing, we are counting down the top 10 disturbing things people have said
if
after
you're aware
waking
and you
up
can't do
from a
anything
coma.
about it.
So let's get
crazy.
started. Starting us off in our number 10 spot, a haunted monster. I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with sleep paralysis demons, and if you aren't, well, just count yourself as lucky. And although I've never really given it much thought before today, I wonder just how many people see a haunted demon or a vision during a coma. Well,
I've never
as you probably
seen
guessed it by
anything
now,
with sleep
that is what this
paralysis,
first
but I
story
just
is
can't
about.
move.
A Reddit user named GW451 said that before they entered a coma, which occurred after falling from the second story of a gym under construction and landing on their head, they had watched The Grudge, and well, let's just say, I'm sure they regretted that decision.
Oh, no.
Quote, during the whole coma, I dreamed that I was trapped in a completely white room with the Grudge girl. She never moved and she just stood there. But when I woke up from that coma, I refused to close my eyes for a couple of nights out of fear that she would still be there. I mean, I don't blame them. That sounds terrifying. Next up at number 9,
that was stuck in
a
his
medically
mind right
induced
before.
nightmare. This next one comes from Reddit user GreenFingers559 about the time they were in a coma in 2016 after a seizure caused them to fall and hit their head on the sink in the bathroom. Quote, it was like the longest, scariest dream of my life. I was medically induced by a fentanyl drip for about a week at first, and let me tell you, fentanyl is a demon. They go on to explain that it was essentially non-stop wacky dreams about fighting corrupt hospital officials and so on, which is strange because the brain clearly had some idea about where they were, but the drugs they were given were making them hallucinate while they were in the coma, causing our Reddit friend to believe they were in some kind of extreme danger. I mean, I've had some weird dreams before, but imagine one lasting for a month and a half straight.
Oh, no.
Coming in at number 8,
That'd be
a mermaid
horrible.
tea party. You know how in horror movies every little girl happens to be the creepiest character? Well, this next one kind of has that same vibe. According to one dad who posted online about his young daughter's coma, when she awoke, she told her parents of all the strange things she had done and seen while she'd been out. One of which was apparently playing a mermaid tea party with her dead grandparents, which, you know, is sweet on one hand, but also a little creepy. The other experience she told her father about was that she was allegedly denied from entering the gates of heaven because St. Patrick, as she said, told her it wasn't her time yet.
Right.
The dad said, quote, I know it's supposed to be St. Peter, but I wore a shirt that reads St. Patrick is my homeboy, and she exclaimed excitedly that she had met him. So if what this girl experienced really happened, she would have almost died, and I guess that's why she was able to have a tea party with her dead grandparents.
That's just
again, kind of creepy, but
near-death
thankfully she came out alive. Coming in at number 7, a financial mess. You would think that if someone was in a coma, their bills they may have missed during that time might be overlooked, and there would be some kind of grace period to get them back on track. However, according to this next story, companies don't seem to care one bit. Posted by a now deleted Reddit account, they start off by explaining that after they woke up from their coma, their finances were in such bad shape that they aren't sure they will ever recover from it. Quote, there is no forgiveness for us. Recently, I totally lost it on a debt collector. I was screaming through the phone at him, do you think I planned this? What part of $0 do you not understand? Now unable to work due to complications from their coma, they're on disability income, but the state insists on taking a large chunk of that pay for missed child support payments that were not made during the extended period they were in a coma. What's especially wild about all of this is that both this person's sons are now adults and off in the Marines, but the state insists that they have to pay the arrears. According to our friend here, quote, "Some days I think about just robbing banks to get out of this." Well, let's hope they can find a better solution than that. Next up at number 6, it feels real. You know when you have a really lucid dream and when you wake up there's that half a second where you have to remind your brain that what just happened didn't actually happen? Well, according to this next story, that is exactly how their coma felt. Quote, "I was in a medically induced coma for 2 weeks about 3 months ago. I had open heart surgery. It didn't go well. I had trouble coming off the ventilator, so they just put me into a coma to try and give me some time to heal. But sadly for them, it was anything but peaceful. Quote, I had nightmares the entire time from the medicine they were using to knock me out. I thought I'd been kidnapped by a nurse and was a victim of sex trafficking. I thought my drug addict aunt had her friends rob my sister and her husband, killing my brother-in-law and a young member of his family, and I thought I was constantly being grabbed by people under my bed. It was not fun. I can't say that I knew I was in a coma or anything. I'm usually one of these people that when I have a bad dream, I can tell myself it's just a dream and wake myself up in order to end it. This was not like that. I was convinced it was all really happening. I can only imagine the relief they felt when they woke up.
Have that happening, and there's nothing you can do about
Coming
it.
Coming in at number 5,
it just keeps going.
A nightmare. This next one was posted to Reddit by Chocolate Milk Shark, and they explained what being in a coma was like for them. They start off by explaining they had a 6-day coma because of a car accident, and that while they were out, they remember being in a room adorned in a medieval fashion. Quote, I don't remember the details, but the wall had this really weird painting. I don't even remember the specifics, but it depicted an unsettling horror. I remember that it was satanic, yet it depicted something that was very real. Something that anyone that didn't believe in that sort of thing, i.e. me, couldn't deny or refute. They then go on to say, quote, I remember being in that room with the painting while in a cage. The cage was too small for me. It was like a cartoon, like I'd been crammed in there. I could only look in one direction because the cage was too small for me to turn my head. While I could only see one side of the room, I knew for sure there were people behind me. Not just one either. Every once in a while, I heard a whisper or a faint set of footsteps. I was so scared of them. At one point, I felt like I was drenched in sweat. I was scared because I heard a deep, dark, raspy voice that said, all right, it's time. All at once, I heard people running towards me. When I realized what was happening, I struggled to break free from the cage. I was trying to push it over for some reason, thinking that it would somehow do me good. It was futile. I remember people just circling my cage looking down at me. Then I remember a hand as black as night with white nails putting its hand through the holes of the cage, reaching in to touch my face. And that's when they came to. They were in the hospital and their niece was waving their hand in front of their face. I mean, talk about a weird experience. Coming in at number 4,
I said it before, but
this next story is not as horrifying as some of the others on this list, but it's still a strange and rather inexplicable experience, so here it goes. Quote, this is really bizarre, but my uncle, a very serious, strict, and rather dry man, had an accident and went into a coma a few years back. He never believed anything he couldn't touch. No talks about souls or anything similar. But he was in a coma for a few weeks until he woke up and had this crazy AF story. He said he saw himself in a bubble floating around in a white place and it was peaceful and beautiful. But then he said there were other bubbles he could see around him and they had other people in them. He distinctly remembered a black-haired woman singing in the bubble closest to his until one day her bubble burst and she disappeared. When he woke up, he could give a very clear description of her body, age, and all that. Now, here's the wild part. There was a woman, one floor below him, in a coma who sadly had passed away before he woke up. You guessed it, black hair, age, body, all correct. He had never met or seen this woman in his life, but knew she had died. So did this guy somehow witness her death while in a coma? Is there some kind of bubble purgatory in another plane of the universe? Who knows? Coming in
think
at
this
number
just
3,
depends on the
military
person.
training. This next one comes from a guy that fell into a coma during basic training after he caught meningitis. And although, thankfully, he was okay in the end, there were some insane parts in the middle. Quote, I was in and out of a coma for about a week and I don't remember much, but when I was first awake, I was fully paralyzed from the neck down. My wife came to visit me and she told me I smelled like urine because they didn't give me a catheter, nor did anyone help me to the bathroom. So I just laid in bed and pissed myself over and over. By the time I fully woke up a few days later, I had very little feeling in my legs and was very wobbly when I walked, and I couldn't fully stretch my arms without severe pain in my hands. When I was released, I asked about why no one helped me, and they told me they don't help any patients because they have too many people faking symptoms to get out of training. They sent me back to basic training where I slept for 3 days straight only to be woken to eat. When I woke up after those 3 days, they gave me all my gear and sent me on a 4-mile forced march, during which time I tripped 74 times and fell down 6 times. Because I didn't quit on that march, they kept me in training and I graduated the same class as I started, which is unheard of and completely insane. I couldn't even finish the final fitness test, so they just pencil whipped the record, all because I didn't quit. I mean, can you imagine thinking someone was faking a coma and making them finish their training even though they had woken up paralyzed? Like, what? Coming in at number 2, an out-of-body experience. This next one comes from another deleted Reddit account, and it's about a man who says he had a literal out-of-body experience during his coma.
I believe in that.
My dad was in a coma for about a week after riding his bike headfirst into a telephone pole. He says that he remembers the accident itself, followed by an out-of-body experience. He remembers flying high above the scene of the accident and looking down at his body laying there lifeless. He remembers seeing a woman from the neighborhood rushing over to see what happened, and other neighbors brought out a flat beach chair to put him on while waiting for the ambulance. After, he woke up from the coma and immediately broke down crying as the influx of stimulation and confusion poured in. His brain was stuck about 5 or 6 years in the past. He remembered his phone number, address, etc., but from years ago, and he couldn't remember the current info. It took about 2 weeks after coming to for his brain to catch back up to the current day. But the craziest part of this whole story is that after he woke up, he went to the house of the woman who he had seen first from above and asked if she had been the first to get there and other info about what he saw from the outside of his body. And she confirmed all of it. And last up in our
I believe
number 1
that
spot
one.
today,
My dad had a similar
locked-in
experience.
syndrome. One of the biggest fears I have is suffering from locked-in syndrome, which, if you don't know, is a condition where the body is completely paralyzed, so you are literally just trapped inside your own mind. Now, there are ways to function with this condition, but when staff don't know you have it, it would be truly horrifying. Quote, there was a kid named Martin Pistorius who fell into a coma for 12 years, but his mind woke up 2 years into it. However, he was unable to speak or move, and everyone believed he was a vegetable at best. This wasn't the case. His mind was fully there. For over a decade, he was mistreated in facilities that played Barney repeats every single day for years without him being able to look away. He was also hurt by staff who thought he was in a coma, and a victim of SA on top of that. At one point, he couldn't stop throwing up, so the nurses tube fed him his own vomit. His parents were unaware of all of this and tried adapting the best they could, but Martin feared this would be his whole life. Now, the good news is that eventually someone realized he was responsive and got him the help he needed, and now he has a wife and kids, talks with a computer, and is a programmer. This man has now done TED Talks, written books, and lives a really full life. So thankfully he has a happy ending. But I just can't imagine being trapped and abused for 10 years
people
while
can be so
everyone
cruel.
thought I was in a coma. Well, that's all I've got for you today, guys. I hope you liked this video.
Well, I thought that was really interesting. But what I was going to say is my dad had an experience. He wasn't in a coma. It was during his open heart surgery. And I remember after the surgery, well, first let me explain that they did lose him on the operating table. The doctor told us that, but they brought him back. And after the surgery was over, like probably a few days afterwards, we went into his room to talk to him. And he asked us if we'd seen the video of the surgery. And we're like, video? No, we didn't see any video. And he said, yeah, I saw a video where all the doctors were running around me going crazy and everything. And then he kind of realized that he had died and he was above his body watching all of this when it happened. He also started crying, and my dad didn't usually cry. But he started crying and said that he saw his mom, my grandmother, but she told him that he had to go back. It wasn't his time yet. He ended up passing probably about, probably about 4 or 5 years after that. So I believe in all that. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you've ever had anything like a near-death experience or anything like that, let me know. Now it's time for a joke. I went to a party last night. Everyone had a cold. Yo, it was friggin' sick.